If you're familiar with Canada, you've probably seen our official Canadian flag that looks like this. And our unofficial Canadian flag that looks like this. As a patriotic Canadian, I myself turned the unofficial flag into a t-shirt. It is no secret how most of us feel about Trudeau, and it's safe to say he's aware of it too.
Oh, what's it gonna be?
Oh, come on.
Oh, no, wait. Good luck.
That. More of these flags everywhere, please.
Good luck in 2025, because you're gonna need it.
This year is an election year in Canada, and the favorite to win this election is the first politician to go viral for eating an apple, Pierre Poilievre.
Certainly you tap very strong ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Left wing, this and that, right wing, it's that type of ideological thing.
I never really talk about left
But
or right.
anyways,
I don't really believe in that.
Okay. A lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Like which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but...
Like who?
I don't know who, but...
Well, you're the one who asked the question, so
yeah.
You must know somebody.
Pierre recently sat down for an almost 2-hour interview with fellow Canadian and man whose suit collection is better than yours, Jordan Peterson. Quite honestly, Pierre already had my vote just by virtue of there really being no other viable options. But after watching the interview, I do genuinely feel comfortable saying that I'm not just voting against Trudeau, I am going to vote for Pierre. Let me explain. Hello everyone, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your second, third, fourth time watching one of my videos and you're not yet subscribed, we already go together. Okay, make it official and hit that subscribe button. As I mentioned in the intro, I am going to be reacting to Jordan Peterson's podcast with Pierre Poilievre. It's an alliteration. Anyways, let me stop being a nerd. Quick disclaimer, the clips are going to be played at 1.25 speed. So if it seems like they are talking slightly faster than usual, it's because I sped it up. But let's get into the video.
Why should Canadians believe that the vision that you just laid out is something that you hold personally dear and not merely, a set of carefully calculated campaign slogans?
Well, I look back at everything I've done for my entire political career to the time I was a teenager. Some people even dug up my old university essays, and I've been saying precisely the same thing the entire time. When I was 20, I wrote an essay as Prime Minister I would, and the title was Building Canada on Freedom. And the entire piece was about making the government small and maximizing personal freedom. So that's basically what I'm doing now. When I launched my leadership race, I literally had the same language in my leadership launch speech that I had put in that essay 22 or 23 years earlier. And when I was part of the Harper government, we basically fought for and did the same things then that I'm proposing to do now. So as much as you can be assured of anything any political leader says, I've got evidence to back it up.
That's a pretty fair answer. He's consistent. Something some of his political opponents aren't. Like if Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP party, were consistent, we could have gotten Justin Trudeau out of office months ago. But Jagmeet Singh lies. Jagmeet Singh blames the Trudeau government for the high cost of groceries.
Cost over $70 for this baby formula. A sack of potatoes, one bag of potatoes.
But then he continues to support Trudeau. Like he literally produced a campaign ad that was seen all over TV, all over the internet just a few months ago that was disparaging Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau has proven again and again he will always cave to corporate greed. The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people.
But a few weeks later, when it came time to do a no confidence vote to get Trudeau out of office, Salot Singh voted in favor of the man he called selfish and greedy because he wants to hold on to power to qualify for his pension. Don't you love it when the pot calls the kettle black? Yes, I'm using a potted kettle as a prop. I don't care, okay? I'm making a point. I would say consistency is a minimum requirement in the upcoming election. When Pierre mentioned that he wrote an essay as a teenager about how he would run Canada, I looked online for it, and I found it. The essay was published in the Calgary Herald in 1999, and if you want to read it, I will have it linked below. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but I will read the first paragraph because it's pretty indicative of the rest of the essay. And so here's what he wrote in the first paragraph. Although we Canadians seldom recognize it, the most important guardian of our living standards is freedom. The freedom to earn a living and share the fruits of our labor with loved ones. The freedom to build personal prosperity through risk-taking and a strong work ethic. The freedom of thought and speech. The freedom to make personal choices, and the collective freedom of citizens to govern their own affairs democratically. In his essay, he also discusses lowering taxes on middle-class people, getting rid of capital gains tax to empower entrepreneurs and investors. He says he would get rid of corporate subsidies, and he also said that he would put a term limit of 2 terms to prevent prime ministers from focusing on maintaining power rather than serving their constituents, which would be great because here in Canada, we do not have term limits, and as we have seen with Trudeau, that can be exploited at the detriment of Canadians. The essay is very well written, especially for a 19-year-old, and I think it's worth the read. So if you want to read it, as I mentioned before, it will be linked down below if you want to read the whole thing.
The reason I'm bringing them up as an example is because, well, they were a conservative government, and they certainly didn't govern by anything approximating conservative principles. And so how do you feel about the probability that if the Conservatives in Canada take power, that they'll be enticed into this global utopian delusion that seems to have enveloped so many leaders, kind of regardless of their political stripe? What do you think, if anything, can inoculate you or has inoculated you against that?
I know better.
I would love to be a fly on the wall when he sits down and negotiates with Trump.
Well, elaborate. What do you mean?
I'm not going to do that. And it will be hard because the temptation will be, this is the mistake that conservative parties around the world have made countless times. They think, well, anybody who's got a conservative mindset is already voting for me, so I can go off and chase the ideas of my political opponents, and then everyone will love me because I'll have the conservatives due to the fact that I have the name conservative, and then I'll have all these other people because I've embraced their contrary direction. And in the short term, it works because you manage to have all of these people under, and all of the different political ideologies captured in one tent. But the problem happens when the policies are a disaster. And then people wake up and go, oh my God, my taxes are now up, the inflation is out of control, the deficit is spiraling, there's crime on the streets. Does the temptation exist to try and take on the political policies of the socialists in the short term? Sure, but it's one that I will fiercely resist because I know that by the 4th year of my mandate, people would be enraged because their lives would be even worse.
You know, I have to say, I don't see there being much temptation to pander to liberal ideologies because most liberals are even tired of modern day liberalism here in Canada because it isn't even liberalism. It's become radical leftism. Like I can't see Pierre Poilievre going on to Canada's Drag Race in an attempt to reach across the aisle to liberals. The majority of Canadians all feel the same about lowering taxes, censorship, gender ideology, especially when it targets children, funding overseas conflicts, government overreach, and I'm sure there's other things that I'm missing, but there is a long list of things that 90% of the country agrees on. If he focuses on those things, he will have the overwhelming support of majority of the country, and pandering to the small group of people who belong in the insane asylum would not be politically advantageous.
From what I've been able to understand, the richest people per capita is Ontario. Ontario inhabitants are now poorer per capita than inhabitants of Mississippi, and that's the poorest American state. So the inhabitants of Canada's richest province are poorer than the inhabitants of the United States' poorest state, and that's actually occurred primarily in the last 10 years.
Yes.
And because we were basically at parity before that. Yes. And had historically been not quite as rich as the Americans, with some blips above them, but pretty much tracking them one-to-one. Yeah. And now it's 60%, something like that.
Up until recently, I don't think people outside of Canada were aware of just how bad things have been economically since Trudeau took power. I love to travel to Mexico. It's one of my favorite places. And whenever I'm there, people assume I'm American. And everything has a price tag that is either Mexican pesos or US dollars. And so when people try to sell me something that they know I might not be interested in, they try to persuade me by saying, it's cheap, oh, come buy it, it's only $30. And I have to ask, 30 US dollars? And of course they say yes. And I have to tell them, I'm not American, I'm Canadian, I'm poor, it's gonna cost me $1,000. Which is an obvious exaggeration, but the concept is the same. An American is paying $30. I'm paying $43 because our dollar is trading at 69 cents. We have not even been close to parity with the American dollar for like 10 years. And that's because our liberal government has mismanaged the economy.
So the socialist policies that provide goods and services to Canadians, let's say, or denizens of other countries, by printing money, actually punish the poor brutally.
Oh, absolutely.
In consequence of the inflation that they generate.
Yes, I mean, all the socialist policies in practice redistribute from the working class to the super wealthy, in practice. The final reason why it's so immoral is nobody votes on it. The basic principle of our parliamentary system is the government can't tax what Parliament has not voted. The people must, no taxation without representation, right? But no one ever votes to have the money printing happen. The inflation is adopted secretly, and you blame the grocer because groceries are more expensive, or your local gas station because gas is more, or your realtor because house. When in fact it was actually the government that bid up all of those things with money printing, and you didn't even know about it.
Everything is more expensive than ever, and one thing that I've been wanting to hear from Pierre is what is his plan to correct this. He talks a lot about axing the tax, meaning axing the carbon tax, which I support. But besides that, I've wanted to hear what other policy proposals he has. And in the interview, he does give an answer.
So what would you do to stop inflation?
Well, we stop the money printing. You know, we need, and the money printing is just a means to fund deficit spending. Mm-hmm. The deficit right now is $62 billion, and
I thought it had a ceiling of
$41 billion. Yeah, right.
Wasn't that a ceiling?
Yeah.
Guess not, eh?
I guess not.
Mm-hmm.
Look, there are very real present-day consequences for that. Deficits increase the money supply. Central banks effectively facilitate that increase in the money supply, and that causes inflation. What we have to do is stop growing the money supply and start growing the stuff money buys. Produce more energy, grow more food, build more homes. We have to unleash the free enterprise system to produce more stuff of value. And this is where we have to remove the artificial scarcity that the government is imposing on the population. Let's incentivize our municipalities to grant the fastest building permits in the world to build homes.
And you have a plan for that, in principle?
Yes, I mean, I'm going to say to the municipal governments, they either speed up permits, cut development charges, and free up land, or they will lose their federal infrastructure money.
You know, as a teenager and a young adult growing up here in Ontario, I thought it was normal for the cost of houses to increase at such a rapid rate because I didn't know anything else. I thought this was a normal part of real estate, and while it is normal for assets to appreciate in value over time, house prices here have been increasing rapidly over a short period of time because the supply was always so much lower than demand. New home builds have not kept pace with immigration and population growth, and so a lot of us are aware that supply and demand affects house prices. But one thing that I didn't know was that the bureaucracy also adds a premium on the cost of homes, and Pierre explained that in this interview.
And the percentage of a new house price that's a consequence of government taxation and regulation?
Well, in Vancouver, it's 60%.
60%.
60%.
Now, does that include the land and the house?
Yes, that includes everything. So I'll tell you how they calculate it. C.D. Howe took the cost of building compared the cost of building a home to the cost of buying a home.
Yeah.
And he said, what's the gap between those two things? So they added up land, labor, profit for the developer, materials, and they compared that to the sale price, and they found the gap was $1.2 million. So that's $1.2 million of extra cost above and beyond the materials, the labor, the land, and the profit for the developer. So where's that going? Well, the answer is development charges, sales taxes, land transfer taxes,
Right.
the delays in getting the permit, time is money, the consultants, lawyers, accountants, lobbyists that the developer has to hire in order to get the approval. So in other words, we're spending twice, in Vancouver, we spend twice as much on bureaucrats than we do on all other things combined to build a home. More money goes to bureaucrats than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers who build the place. And to add insult to injury, those tradespeople who build homes can't afford to live in them.
Right.
I mean, it is, so what we need to do is slash the bureaucracy. And I'm going to say to the mayors, you're not getting federal infrastructure money until you slash your development charges, speed up your permits. I'm going to take the federal GST off new homes under a certain limit and encourage the provinces to do the same. But we've got so much land. We should have the most affordable housing in the world. I mean, it should be dirt cheap because we have the most dirt.
Canada has so much unused land, and I've never understood why there weren't more initiatives to start new city centers across the country. You know, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Calgary, all these major cities can only fit so many people in them and around them. The reason most people flock to major cities is mostly because that's where the jobs are. Most people will only live like a 1 hour commute away from their work. So the majority of Canadians live within a major city or a 1-hour radius away from a major city, which also contributes to high property prices and overcrowding in major cities. I think it's time that the provincial governments and federal governments put together a solid plan to create more employment opportunities outside of major cities, as well as housing developments outside of major cities to incentivize people to settle in more sparsely populated areas. In the next clip, I learned a piece of information that I didn't know, but now that I know, I'm pissed. And if you are a Canadian taxpayer, you will be pissed too.
That the Trudeau administration has increased the federal bureaucracy 40%.
In bodies, yes.
In bodies since its inception. But despite that, they've also radically increased the amount of money that they're spending on consultants. They're as expensive as employees
they're
go
way more expensive.
Yeah, as any employee you could ever possibly have, right? $600 an hour, something like that. Right, so they've massively increased the size of the federal bureaucracy, but also massively increased the degree to which they outsource the work that hypothetically the bureaucrats should be doing.
And this is not, it sounds like one of those sort of annoying things that bothers us all, but isn't very substantive. You know, you think these, one guy is making $600 an hour. We're spending $21 billion on federal government consultants alone.
That just sounds like money laundering to me. If you need a consultant to do your job for you, why are you even there? Imagine you go to a mechanic, someone who is supposed to be specialized in fixing cars. You drop off your car, and when you come back, some other random person is there working on your car, and the mechanic says to you, well, I wasn't capable of doing the job, and so I paid this guy to do it, so you're still gonna have to pay me, but also you have to pay the guy that's actually doing the work. That's basically what the government is doing. If you are put in that position, it should be because you know how to do that job. Yes, sometimes you do have to hire consultants, but $21 billion a year? That sounds like money laundering to me, and the Trudeau government has done some shady shit with our money before.
How are you going to deal with the fact that the easiest thing to do for Canadians and for the remnants of the legacy media will be to wait until the Trudeau government collapses completely, dumps the economic mess on your shoulders, and then 2 months later proclaim that it's your fault?
Right.
Well, and it will be your responsibility at that point. And so,
they get the party, I get the hangover. But it's going to be a big fight with all of these things because there are so many vested interests that will be trying to hold us back. So many small economic groups that have profited off the status quo, they will be fighting against me. And I'm going to have to put a call to Canadians that they have to stay politically active. They can't assume that simply by by voting in an election that everything is going to, all the problems are going to reverse instantaneously. I will need people to put pressure on the Senate to adopt my economic reforms. I will need people to put pressure on their mayors and local councillors to get out of the way and let us build homes. So that's going to have to change. The developers are going to have to inform people in the cities why housing costs so much. How is it possible that Olivia Chow can raise development charges by 30% and nobody in Toronto knows about it? Well, it's because the builders have not made it known. And so the builders take the blame when the housing costs go up. I'm sorry, you have to politics is a participation sport, not a spectator sport. So our business community is going to have to step up and make the argument for these changes, or I will come up against a lot of political barriers. So my message to everyone is, God willing, I will triumph in the election. But the people who want the changes that I'm talking about are going to have to stay politically active to push them through and over the finish line.
After watching this interview, I am so much more excited for him to become the next prime minister. And like he said, politics is not a spectator sport. It requires participation. And I hope enough people hear that message and they take it to heart. How do you guys feel about Pierre? This is like the first time that I think people all around the world actually care about what's happening in Canada. I've seen comments from people in Australia, in the UK, all over the States, who have been dealing with some of the same problems that we've been dealing with here in Canada. So yes, I do read your guys' comments. So thank you guys for your comments. And also, just so you know, when you comment, it does help my videos in the algorithm. When you hit the like button, it does help my videos in the algorithm. So I appreciate all of you guys who do it. And I would appreciate it if you would do it on this video as well. If you would like to support me on Patreon, I will have my links to Patreon in the description box down below, as well as the links to my social media. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, I will have 2 more just like it for you in the end cards. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.